I wanted to break down a post I found on each MBTI type's least favourite things and which cognitive functions that they most relate to. To save this from being too long, I will break it into 4 parts, based on the order of the post. So I will start with the TJs, then in the next video I'll focus on the FJs, then the FPs, and finally the TPs in the 4th video. I will first look at ISTJs. Their first least favourite thing according to the post is underperforming, which will be related to their secondary TE that values efficiency, both towards the self and towards others. So if the ISTJ feels that they are underperforming, that will be just as much of an issue as, for example, someone they work with underperforming as well. The way this will be measured will be subjective, based on what the ISTJ believes that they themselves or the other person is capable of doing, and whether they believe that this capability is being met. Next is letting others down. This is linked to integrity and doing what they say, which I think is sort of a core value for TE, as the people I know with TE either first or second definitely try to always have integrity. So if they let others down, it looks bad on them and their abilities, which is why they will try to avoid doing it. Being nagged is another one. This will also most likely be ability related. If you have to nag an ISTJ repeatedly about doing something, then it will likely be taken as you telling them that they are doing a bad job, they don't know how to plan their time, and they are actually incompetent. This is not a good thing for TE regarding incompetency, and for SI regarding the planning and organisation part. And finally is a lack of honour. SI values tradition, and being honourable is a long-standing tradition, especially for men in history. And being honourable also links with having integrity, which will affect TE. Being seen to lack in honour is hitting a core value that SI and TE have, but probably also tertiary FI has as well, therefore it won't be a good thing for an ISTJ. Moving on to ESTJs. They are said to dislike being disrespected, which will be linked with their dominant TE. They will naturally lean towards leadership roles, and respect is a big part of being a leader. Therefore, if they are disrespected, it is like saying they are a bad leader. Whining is also seen as an issue for ESTJs, and this will be linked with TE and efficiency. It is much more efficient to just state the issue so it can be dealt with, rather than complain and beat around the bush. Issues cannot be dealt with if nobody knows about them, or if people are too worried about offending each other. The most efficient thing to do is to just say it. Having to be emotionally open will be linked to having inferior FI, and therefore the ESTJ will highly prefer to be logical over emotional because it is their dominant state. Emotions can't be understood with logic and tradition, which ESTJs naturally use with a dominant TE and secondary SI. Therefore emotions are seen as unnecessary, and potentially even harmful to the status quo in certain situations. The last one is stated as New Age silliness. I think that's a rather subjective topic, because I'm not quite sure what constitutes New Age silliness. I guess they could mean anything with no evidence that is based purely on feeling and experience. That could be an issue for ESTJs, because there is no standing tradition of facts that can support it, nor is there any quantifiable logic to explain them. But I'm not quite sure on that last point, so I'll leave it there. Moving on to INTJs. The first in the list is ignorance. Being an INFJ who also has dominant NI, I know that ignorance is definitely linked with NI, even intuition in general. NI does not like close-mindedness, or an inability to even accept the existence of anything outside of your own personal worldview. So ignoring that different sides and viewpoints exist, or failing to accept that your viewpoint may not be 100% correct, will annoy INTJs. Flippant behaviour is next. This could mean one of two things. It could mean acting in a way that is dismissive of others, which would link with ignorance as just mentioned. Or it could mean acting completely spontaneously, with no thought for future ramifications, both good or bad. That will also bug NI, because NI is the master of planning and seeing the potential future pitfalls in things before it takes the first step. So somebody that acts the opposite will irritate an INTJ. It's also not very efficient, because you won't be learning from your mistakes and making changes, so TE will be included there too. Then comes feeling stupid. I would link this with TE as it relates to abilities, and TE puts high credence in efficiency and effectiveness, which often means it needs to be very good, if not the best, at something it's doing. Thus, feeling stupid can be taken as saying that the INTJ is not as competent and is wrong about their own abilities. Subjectivity is the last issue mentioned. I would say this will be an issue when it is related to ignorance, so only one viewpoint is being considered, rather than looking at the TE logic of a scenario to make the best decision, especially if that viewpoint is based on emotion or tradition only. If nobody is willing to consider that something new may be better than the way it has always been, just because they don't want to or they don't like the idea of it, even with heaps of logic and facts in front of them, then it is likely to annoy the INTJ. The first least favourite thing for ENTJs is being wrong. That's good old TE again, as this will be taken as the ENTJ isn't competent enough. This will also be related to the secondary NI, which will most likely have tried lots of different potential scenarios while they were processing, so the answer they come up with will have likely involved a lot of thought, and thus them being wrong means they aren't good enough at what they're doing and what they're thinking. Next is having to handle something with kid gloves. This is not a very efficient way of dealing with something, especially when the reason is to not offend someone or to hurt their feelings. Then feelings and emotions become a hindrance to efficiency, and TE will wish to disregard them completely and just focus on the cold logic. Their FI is 4th, and is seen as an annoyance and cause for stress, so anything that involves lots of emotions, or using pure emotions to make decisions, will irritate an ENTJ. Next is failure. ENTJs put a lot of credence in their own abilities and endeavours to become the best at what they do, so failing will seem like a slap in the face for them. Like their hard work wasn't good enough, which is another issue for both TE, which is focused on being the most effective, and NI, which will have looked ahead for the best way to do things, as well as their inferior FI, which will likely feel hurt that the ENTJ isn't seen as good enough to succeed. Lastly is immaturity and crying. I put them both together as they're pretty much the same thing for an ENTJ. Immature people will likely cry over issues instead of talking calmly, and you can't often talk logically to someone who is overcome with emotion. It wouldn't be very effective. It is best to walk away and return when they are level-headed and you can discuss the issue properly. Immature people will often get very emotional very quickly over very small issues, just like young children do, and this will annoy an ENTJ who won't feel like that person is worth communicating with because they will just overreact to anything that is said. I will end here and look at the FJs next week. I hope this video was interesting. I definitely find breaking things down like this helps me to understand people around me better, because it makes me look at why certain things bother them, and what I can do instead to ensure that they don't feel stressed or underappreciated. Thank you for your time.